maybe. We started following the book of Nehemiah, and his good work was to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem so that God's people, their city, would no longer be a reproach. Therefore, God's people would no longer be a reproach. Therefore, God would no longer be a reproach. He was a laughing stock of all the gods in this area because they're like, your God really is the real? And because they didn't even have a wall, they were like totally defeated people. But God had a plan, and he put this plan through Nehemiah. And our motif has been building this God-ordained vision block by block until we get where we're going. And so we've been talking, we've covered 12 of them so far. If you need to go back and find them, we have them up on screen. We'll leave them up for just a second if you need to jot a few down if you missed some of them. We've done 12 of them so far. Last week, I told you that there's going to be all kinds of things that are going to try to get between you and the vision that God has for you. The future, the great future that God has for you. There's going to be all kinds of things that are going to try to stop you or to straight up stop or to get you to drift just off course a little bit. And last time we talked about the outside opposition and how that seeks to destroy the calling on your life. Tonight we're going to talk about a more dangerous plot to take down the vision. It's darker, more hostile, it's more cutthroat, it's more messy. It's the worst kind of opposition that will derail the God-ordained vision in your life, and it is the inside opposition. When I say inside opposition, I mean people who are supposed to be on the same team, but they are working separately. They're working against each other. They're working at cross purposes. They're tearing each other apart. And imagine if you had an engine that was designed to work in a certain way, like all your cars have. Imagine that engine is working just right, man. Everything is on. I mean, it's timed just perfectly so that it works to get a car to its place where it's supposed to go, right? Imagine that engine now, just one piece of it's working out of rhythm with the rest or working against it. That thing will explode. Imagine that. Now, imagine the body of Christ is like that engine. And if God could ever get us to work together, I'm like, I don't know why God trusted humans. The hardest thing I've ever seen in my 20-some years of being a Christian and my like 18 years of ministry is that it is so easy to get you guys working against each other. All the devil has to do is put one seed of discord, watch away, and watch you guys just fight each other. All he's got to do is get you to distrust me, and it's all done. All he's got to do is get one little piece of the engine out of time, and the whole thing explodes, and we never get where God designed for us, he created for us to do. That's all he's got to do. So let's talk about block 13. Block 13 is this. Visions thrive when there's unity. Visions can go anywhere when there's unity. And they die when there's division. They thrive when there's unity. They die when there's division. This is so important to God. That it's all over the New Testament. If you open your eyes as you're reading in your quiet times the New Testament, I want you to be looking for every time it says be of one mind, be together, work together. Try to not be separate. Try to work together. If you just have your mind open to that and see how many times God says that through Paul, Peter, John, and himself, Jesus himself, you will see that this is a big deal to Jesus. Matthew 12:25 says this, a house divided against itself can't stand. It can't stand. In fact, the last prayer that Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane before he goes off to the cross is that you and each other would be one as the Father and he are one. Just like Jesus, the Father and the Holy Spirit are one. He wants the body to be one like that. That is his heart's cry. He prayed it so hard that he was bleeding blood. He was sweating blood. That's what it was. And Ephesians 4 says this, that we need to be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit. We need to be diligent. Why would we have to be diligent to preserve unity? Because that is the number one thing the enemy is going to attack. I mean, think about this. All Thanos had to do to get these impossible to beat guys, people, the Avengers, all he's got to do, and also all the movies, all he's got to do to defeat them is to get up in between them, sow discord, and they fight each other. And that's what we watch mostly through the Avengers, is them fighting each other. If they would just be together, the movie would only be 5 minutes. So that's why they have to fight each other, because it's like, well, we got the union guys, they're getting paid, so We got to make it 2 hours, 3-hour movie. Anyway, tonight we're going to look at the 4 major internal conflicts that happen in the family of God that almost derail the God-ordained vision. 4 major internal conflicts. I could seriously do a sermon on each one of these. A whole sermon on each one of these, but we're going to just gloss over them. First is the greedy nobles, or the selfish seniors. We got the open letters, or the clever Karens. We got the secret informers, or the self-care sophomores. And we got the unholy alliances, or the relationship renegades, as I call them. I'm going to unpack these. Are you guys ready to go there? Yeah! Okay. Talk to me about the selfish seniors. The first problem that we have on the end, we got enough problems just trying to get this wall built. A working man against self. As I'm lifting and my body's breaking down and getting tired and, sweat and all that kind of stuff. And that's man against self. But then we got this problem with the outside, trying to stop us, and everybody's against us. There are evil forces at work that will profit from you not getting to your God-ordained vision. They do not want to see you get where you're going. They want to stop you at all costs. But then on top of that, you add the internal problems, and we're going to talk about the first one, the greedy nobles or the selfish seniors. Someone say, selfish seniors. Selfish seniors. All right. Remember, to build this wall, everybody had to sacrifice. Now, you'll have to go back to the previous sermons to remember why this is such an important thing. I'm just going to have to go on from there. Just case in point, it's important they build this wall. And everybody was sacrificing everything. They were leaving their farms, their families. They were coming for who knows how long for no pay, to let their fields go. And the wives would have to take care of the fields while they're away. And the wives could only do so much. And on top of that, there's a drought. And on top of that, there's a king's tax. Now, what's happening at this point in time is because of the drought and because of the king's tax, they don't have enough money. And they're not bringing in enough grain to pay the tax and to feed their own families. So they're having to mortgage parts of their farm away. Anybody ever play Monopoly? Yeah. You start building up, and then you have to start mortgaging it away, and you're hoping that you can redeem it and flip that card back over and get people to pay you when they land on your spot. Well, they're having to do that, but they're not only doing that with their land, they're also doing it with their children because they got nothing else. And the idea is this, that I'm gonna sell my kid to you for a little while. You hold that while I'm paying off my debt here, and I'm going to buy the kid back so that they can help me on my farm and so we can be a family. That's how bad things have gotten. Here's the weird part. Who are they paying to get the grain? This is a weird thing. They're paying the Jewish nobles, the selfish seniors, the leaders. Now, everybody's sacrificing, but for some reason, these people think they're more important. Everybody's feeling the pain from this, like, oh man, times are getting rough. But instead of working together, the nobles are like, well, I have a certain level of life I need to maintain, and to get that, I'm going to have to charge this guy and I'm going to have to have his kid. I'm going to make him pay me, even though everybody's suffering. This is something that the Old Testament calls usury. Someone say usury. Usury. And back in Exodus, they said, you are not supposed to charge interest on loans to other Jews. It was considered charity to help them get back on their feet because people were going to have hard times, so we're going to help each other. You can charge interest to outsiders, but this is like the family working against itself. And so this is a big thing. In fact, this is one of the reasons why God lifted his hand of protection off of them, and they all get taken into slavery by Babylon 70 years before this. Another thing is they didn't obey the Sabbath, and another thing is they forgot about the temple, and they didn't care about God. And so God was like, okay, fine. But one of the things God calls against them is usury, how they would use each other, and they would profit off of their pain. So much so that I'm getting my grain and money as a noble while you are suffering and have to even sell your kid into slavery. God is ticked at this. He does not like this at all. And so what does Nehemiah do? Nehemiah's working on the wall, and he sees this, and he's like, oh my gosh. He's got to stop, and he's got to come down off the wall. Now, remember last time we talked about how Sanballat said, come down to the plain of Ono. You remember that? And he says, I'm doing what? Okay, fine. I'm doing a great work. I cannot come down. I'm not going to stop doing this so I can go talk to the enemy who wants to profit off of me not working on the vision, on the God-ordained dream. But he stops what he's doing to go down and take care of this. So that tells us this is a pretty important thing, right? All right, so what does he say? He calls a public meeting. Chapter 5, verse 7. He says this, I rebuked the nobles and rulers, and I said to them, each of you is exacting usury on his brother. So I called a great assembly against them. He says, give their kids back. You've been hiding your kids and get them back. Give them back their kids. Give them back their wives. No time for, we don't got no time for this. Internal bronchitis.
Oh gosh.
We ain't got time for that. Now, and guess what? Forgive their loans, no interest, no penalties. Give them back their stuff. And this is what's crazy. This outsider, Nehemiah, nobody's ever met him. He grew up in Persia. He was born in Persia under parents who were slaves to Persia, got taken away a long time ago. And all he's ever known is Persia. He comes back to the motherland. And here, all these people, the nobles have been there forever. And he comes up and tells them what's up, gives them a going for. And then what do they do? Do they come back and be like, oh, yeah? Well, what are you all about, Nehemiah? No. Verse 8 says, they kept quiet because they couldn't find anything to say. This dude just put the smack down on them. And they don't got nothing. They got their tail between their legs. And they're like, yes, sir. And they walk off. And it's like, how did that happen? We're going to talk about how that happened. That's one of the major building blocks of tonight. But we're going to put a pin in that. And we're going to go on to the second problem. We're going to talk about the clever Karens and open letters. A Karen, according to Urban Dictionary, is a suburban soccer mom who has nothing better to do. Woo! A suburban soccer mom who has nothing better to do than to make everyone else's life miserable. Now, thanks, Karen. Who knew I could use Urban Dictionary in a word of God? All right. So here's the deal. All right, listen up. Check this out. So a clever Karen would be somebody who does that same thing, but you don't even know they've done it. They have caused division, and you don't even know it. You think the clever Karen, I don't like Karen. Clever Karen makes you think they're the good guy when they're actually the bad guy. Now, check this out. When 6:1 came around, Nehemiah said, I cannot come down to the plain of, oh no, I'm doing a great work, I cannot come down. Verse 5, later, Sanballat doesn't give up. This is what he says. Then Sanballat sent his servant before me a fifth time, this time with an open letter in his hand. Why? What is that all about? An open letter tells us, this is something really important we need to understand. An open letter in his hand. A letter was usually set with a seal. You guys remember those? They pour the wax on it, and they put their signet ring on it or their stamp on it. And then the only person that could open that was the person it was like a Facebook message, right? But instead Sanballat wants to have this fight on his Facebook wall, okay? So this is a clever Karen. It's like, hey, do you want to PM me? Let's talk this thing out. They're like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, keyboard warrior, right? And that is a clever Karen. And this is what's happening. Sanballat didn't seal it so that everyone who took it along the way would take a little read at that gossip, right? And this is what he says in verse 6 through 7, is that we heard that you're trying to build this wall so you can rebel against the king of Persia, and you're naming yourself the king, and you're putting prophets in place to prop you up like you're a king. You're trying to be the king of the Jews. Strangely, they said the same thing about Jesus a couple hundred years later. Anyway, and that's why Rome hung him on a cross. So they're trying to say that he's trying to be this rebellious person and going against the king. And so then Sanballat says, but how about this? I won't tell the king that if you just come down off your wall and let's talk about it. Now, this letter, think about it. It's an open letter. It's not really to Nehemiah. He's already said to Nehemiah, come down off the wall. This is to all the people around Nehemiah. Someone say, we going somewhere. We're going somewhere. And I'm going to tell you, man, I could tell you so many stories of the open letter. The open letter is such a dangerous thing of gossip. Why don't you come down? Let's just talk about this. The goal was to spread the rumor that Nehemiah's motives were different than what they were. Pastor Nehemiah, he's just in it for the money. Pastor Nehemiah, he's just trying to become a king, trying to take the very thing that he's doing and say that it's the evil thing that he's not doing. Has that ever happened to you? Anybody ever got you wrong? Anybody said something wrong about you or gossip about you? You heard something through the grapevine, through the open letter that you had done something crazy? that you hadn't done. If the enemy can't get the leader off the wall, he's going to get the people around the leader off the wall or to doubt the leader. Why? Why? Because he knows, the enemy knows that any God-ordained vision is bigger than one man. And if he can get the lead team to stop trusting leader, they're all going in a different direction and the vision doesn't get accomplished. Somebody's got to lead. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me. Somebody's got to lead. But in every case, the enemy's going to try to put distrust of the leader in the lead people around him through the open letter. Do you think, I don't know, what do you think about Mikey? Is he real? Is he authentic? Oh, it's crazy the things I've heard about myself. I'm going to tell you, I am. So there you go. All right. So how does Nehemiah respond? Verse 8, 6-8. Then I sent to them, I sent back to Sanballat and said, no such things that you were saying are being done. You're inventing that crap in your own heart. Mikey paraphrase. Verse 9. For they were all trying to make us afraid, saying that their hands will be what? Weakened for the work, and it will not be done. He's trying to put doubt in the people's minds about the leader so that they are weakened and they can't complete the work. And if the work's not completed, then the people are a reproach. God is still a reproach. It's all back, and the enemy profits off of you not getting to your God-ordained vision. So what does he do? Same thing he always does. He prays. He says, now, therefore, O God, strengthen my hand. The enemy meant this to weaken my team, but now I say, please strengthen us instead. He goes to God. Instead of chasing the rumors, again, he turns to the one for strength. Again, the plot here is to weaken the leadership team because he's already went a go at the leader, couldn't get the leader off the wall, so now he's trying to get the team off the wall. Problem number 3 is the secret informants or the self-care sophomores. What is that? Self-care sophomores. I just wanted alliterations. That's all. I'm not coming down on sophomores. Secret informants. Verse 10. Afterward, I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delilah. You remember her? Son of Methuselah. Right? Who was a secret informer. And he said, hey, he's supposed to be a prophet, by the way. He says, hey, Nehemiah, we got to meet in the house of God inside the temple. Let's close the door in the temple. They are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night, they're coming to kill you. They're trying to kill you. Let's go in and let's hide so they can't kill you. He's supposed to be a prophet. And Nehemiah is like a leader. He's like, man, maybe I should listen to the prophet. But he doesn't. Shemaiah is a Jew. He's supposed to be on their same team. He's living in Jerusalem. He says that Sanballat was sending an assassin to murder Nehemiah, so the only thing we can do is go and hide inside the temple. But this would undermine Nehemiah's authority. Can you imagine your leaders going and hiding while everyone else is working? And like, what the heck is this? If he's in danger, we're in danger. Why is he hiding? This would undermine. If he can't get you to come down off the wall into the valley of oh no and just talk and then be ambushed that way, he can try to get you to go and hide somewhere because you're worried about what's going to happen to you. A self-care sophomore. You might have heard it said like this, oh, you just need to treat yourself. I'm a prophet. I'm coming to you. You're working so hard. You know what you need? You need rest. We just need to be more restful. You know Sabbath day? Let's do Sabbath week. Why don't we just not go to work? You know what? Just skip 2 posts. If you need to, just skip it. Watch it online. You're not going to watch it. Just go play video games. Do something that fills you up. Because video games is going to fill you up more than the hearing of the Word of God and worshiping God. Going to a movie is going to fill you up more than getting under the anointing of the Holy Spirit. I'm going to rest, and I'm going to rest even from church. Take care of yourself. Just treat yourself. There is a freaking crazy thing coming through Christianity that is taking Sabbath that was meant for a day and extending it for the whole week. And it's actually another thing in the Bible called laziness. And boy, you want to do a study on laziness and what happens to the lazy man? It is considered sin and wickedness. You do not want to get these two things mixed up. We rest one day and we work 6. We work hard. We put our hand to the plow and we create amazing things. That's not workaholism. That is doing what God called you to do because you're not going to get there without hard work. You're not. You won't get there. Nothing worth anything is cheap. Okay? So the secret informant is going to try to get you off the wall just to take care of yourself. Self-preservation. Do what you got to do. Just rest. Like, you know what God says? Give, and it will be given to you. Don't hoard, and it will be given to you. Give. If you want to feel filled up again, if you feel empty, you know what it is? You're constipated. You're a constipated Christian. You have everything coming in, and nothing is coming out. This makes you sick and makes you not want to do anything. If you want to feel full, if you want to feel like you have more, then what you need to do is give. Why? Because God so loved that He so loved that He. If you want to feel filled up, empty yourself. Amen. Give it away, and then you will be filled up. I mean, just God said that. Give, and it will be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together like a Coke, right? Then running over like a Coke with Mentos in it, man. That's what will happen if you give. It's not about preserving and hoarding and protecting and taking my time and my time. That's going to leave you empty. And if you hide, you will undermine the vision of God. Verse 6, or chapter 6, verse 11. Someone say we're going somewhere. This is Nehemiah. He's one of my heroes. He says, I got a great work. I can't come down. What are you talking about? You get me off the wall? I ain't getting down. I got a good work to do. He says something pretty awesome here. He says, should such a man as I flee? Should such a man as I flee? For who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his own life? I will not go in. I will not come down. I will not go in. I am finishing the work. Verse 12, I perceived that God, at that moment, I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but that he pronounced this prophecy, because he's supposedly a prophet, but he's a false prophet, against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this reason, he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way and sin. Me hiding is a sin. So that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me, and if I'm a reproach, then my people leave me, and then we don't build the wall, and then the city's a reproach, and then God's a reproach. So what does he do? What he always does. He prays. He deals with it every time. And this is how he prays, verse 14. My God, remember Tobiah and Sanballat according to their works, and the rest of the prophets who would have tried to make me afraid and pin it on you like it's you talking, God. That's not you talking. That's the devil talking right there. Nehemiah I want you to see something about Nehemiah. He's a real leader. He deals with the issue. He doesn't skirt it under the rug. He deals with it every single time. So, let's see what the result of him dealing with it every single time was. Verse 15. So the wall was finished in the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. It took him 52 days to finish this whole wall around a whole city. Imagine that Amarillo, Texas. Do I just need to stop there? Hollywood Road Bridge, 52 days. Would you say, man, whoa. There is a God, right? If that bridge was done in 52 days, everyone would be a believer. We'd have an altar call. This thing would be a revival would strike. Man, if the people of God were building that bridge, and not the state of Texas, we'd be in a lot better shape. Burn. So the wall was finished in 52 days. And check what happens when the wall is built in 52 days. And it happened when our enemies heard about it. And all the nations around us saw these things, that they were very disheartened in their own eyes. For they perceived, what did they perceive when this was done in 52 days? They perceived that the work was done by our God. Now check this out. Think about this for a second. When you win, when you do it the right way, and when you step into a place and the light of God shines around you and you win and your enemies can't say one bad thing about you and the presence of God goes, and when these kind of impossible things happen, people say there has to be a God. There has to be a God. It's crazy what happens when we live a life like God wants us to live. They were very disheartened in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was done by God. Here's the cool thing about the book of Nehemiah. There's not one overt miracle like there is in like Kings and in Jesus' ministry and stuff like that. Nehemiah is just a pretty normal dude. Probably one of the only books in the Bible where it's just a really normal guy, just doing very normal things, very faithfully. And he's one guy that never fails, which is really cool too. And in this story, the miracle is that the people work together. That's how much of a miracle. You don't see an overt miracle, but people working together is actually a miracle because we're made by the flesh to be envious and jealous and selfish ambition, and we want to be noticed, and that person needs to be noticed, and I wouldn't have done it that way, and I would have done it this way. And so the miracle is that they worked together and in 52 days built this wall. It's crazy. But the enemy doesn't stop trying to get you off the wall. Problem number 4, unholy alliances or relationship renegades. I don't know if you guys are ready for this.
I'm ready.
Who's ready for this? If you're not ready, you can leave at this point because this is going to tick you off. Renegade is a person who deserts and betrays an organization, a country, or a set of principles. I'm going to say it again. A person who deserts and betrays an organization, a country, or a set of principles. A friendship renegade is somebody who betrays the move of God for friends. Friends are greater than God. Oh, I would never say that. Yeah, throw that up there. Friends greater than God. I would never say that. No. I think that if something's going on with my friend and the student exec who have to deal with leadership issues, and my friend gets ticked off because something the exec had to decide in a council, I'm choosing my friend over the Wesley. Well, the Wesley's not God. Well, of course it's not God. But if the church is the bride of Christ, and if we, the church, are the hands and feet of God extended, and if our job as the church is to bring the vision of God into the world, and we got friendship renegades, relationship renegades. And I'm going to show you in the Word of God how that works. I'm not making this stuff up. The nobles are sending letters back and forth to Tobiah. Tobiah is sending letters back and forth to the nobles. They're in constant conversation. Now here's what the Bible, the Word of God says. Note those who cause division among you. Don't even eat with those people. But we gotta be loving. We have to be kind. What happens if I walk away from them? Well, God will send somebody else to them. Here's the thing. It says, note those who cause division among you. Those who call themselves Christians, but separate themselves and cause divisions in the body, don't even eat with those people. That's what the Bible says. You can look it up. Now, in Nehemiah, verse 18, it says, many of the Jews had pledged themselves to Tobiah, the enemy. The Jews, the good guys, the ones who are supposed to be the ones making the vision happen, have pledged themselves to Tobiah, the enemy. But why? Why would they pledge themselves to the enemy? Why would anybody pledge themselves to the enemy? Well, because he's the son-in-law of Shechaniah. You know, the son of Erah. You know, the son of Jehonahan. That guy, you know Jehonahan? He comes over with the biscuits. You remember Jehonahan. Well, he married the daughter of Methuselah. You remember Methuselah? He's got the greatest green bean casserole, and he's the son of Berechiah. You remember Berechiah? Oh, he's got the cute dimples. Sounds like a lot of relationships are going on here. A lot of relationships that are more important than the calling of God. And here's the thing. I know Berechiah. I know them. I grew up with them. We were friends. We were just down the street from Berechiah. And Methuselah, man, she's just the sweetest old thing. And who's Nehemiah? He's just a preacher that came to town. He says we're supposed to go and build a new church, but I don't know. I know Berechiah. She's sweet. Relationships greater than God. Because why is Nehemiah here? Do you remember one of the building blocks is the end of the God-Ordained Vision is? I rest my case, Your Honor. And they reported his good deeds, Nehemiah's they reported Tobiah's good deeds to me, Nehemiah. They reported my words to him. Why does it word it like that? They reported his good deeds. Oh, you should see Tobiah. Man, he's got such a thing going over there. Oh, they are just growing. They're just so good. They're so powerful. Man, you should see their might and their strength. Oh, if they came over here. And then they go to Tobiah and be like, Nehemiah, on this day, we had this done by this time, this, that, and this is what he's planning to do. I'm just letting you know. Don't even eat with such a person. That's too harsh, Mikey. I like Berekia. She's the sweetest. Sweetest little gossiper in the world. And let me tell you something. What the Bible says in Timothy about idle women that just go from house to house, just out the salon and everywhere. It's just like, shut up. I give you permission, if you hear gossip, just to say, shut up. Quit being a relationship renegade. Oh, but you get with somebody that's all mad about something that happened here. And they're just shooting arrows at me. Of course, I can't defend myself. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to build a freaking wall. But these people, they got all the time in the world because they ain't doing nothing. They're just throwing arrows and stones at me. And you sit there and you're like, oh, how does that make you feel? All of a sudden you start feeling this thing grow inside your heart. It's called cancer. Relationship cancer. And it's like, oh, you know what? I think so too. And you start throwing up rocks. Well, I don't trust everything he says. Well, I don't know if I would have done it like that. Well, I don't know about all this. And before long, you start acting and looking a little bit more like Tobiah and a little less like Nehemiah. Unholy alliances. In all four of these internal problems, isn't it amazing that God could do anything through us broken people? In all four of these problems, Nehemiah's character is challenged. In the open letter, it's his motives. He's trying to be a king. That's exactly not what he's trying to do. He's just doing what God called him to do. And in the secret informant, his courage is being challenged. Oh, go and hide and preserve yourself. He says, I'm not going to do that. With the unholy alliance, loyalty to him was strained because people are closer to Tobiah than Nehemiah. And with the greedy nobles, it's Nehemiah's character versus the power of these nobles that they have grown to know, all these elders in the church, so to speak. And then this new preacher comes to town and like, which one do I trust? Well, I know these guys. That's what's being challenged here in all four of these things. But he comes out on top every time. Someone say he comes out on top. But how? How does he come out on top? This is crazy. This seems so easy. He comes up and he says, give their stuff back to them. Give their kids back to them. Stop doing this. And he's like, no, I'm not going to go and hide. And hey, I'm not trying to do that. In fact, God, would you take care of that? Remember that. You got his number? Okay, I'm getting back to the wall. And he keeps doing the right thing every single time. Why did the people follow Nehemiah, who they just met, versus these leaders that they have always followed, the nobles? Why? See, I want to tell you something. There are people who have influence, and there's people that don't. It's a tricky thing. You know it when you see it, but it's not really clear sometimes why. Sorry. Clear eyes. Dry eyes, clear eyes. You know it when you see it. Stay with me. But it's not clear why someone has it. Something positioned Nehemiah to win this showdown every single time there was an internal problem with ease. Let's look at his leadership style for a second, okay? How was he able to do this and they trust him over the nobles? He was with the men building the wall. He ate what they ate, and he slept where they slept, and it was right by the walls. That's where they ate, that's where they slept. Their whole time was by the wall. In fact, back in chapter 4, it says this, neither I nor my brethren, my servants, nor the men who guard or follow me, I took all of them, even the guards that brought me from, the guards that brought me from Persia. I said, hey, take off that helmet and pick up a trowel. We're going to work. And they took off, none of us took off our clothes except everyone took them off only for washing. Basically, he was with the people. He wasn't above them like the governors they'd seen before. Here's the thing. Previous governors used to come in here and get us the king's meat and all their provisions, and all the people would be taxed so that the governor could be kind of living up high on the hog. But let's look at what Nehemiah does. He says in verse 14, 16, and 18, three things that we're just going to pop real quick. 14, I did not do that. I didn't eat the king's meat. I didn't do that because of fear of God. Why would I do well when my people are suffering? Heck no. I'm not here to lord over them. I'm not here to pull things out of them. I'm here to serve alongside them. That's a great leader. I did not do that. I didn't take from them because of the fear of God. Now, if you are a leader and you don't have the fear of God, you're not ready to be a leader. And when I say fear of God, I just got to stop for a second. When I say fear of God, I was talking about this in premarital counseling with 3 couples that are getting ready to get married. And I said, when I made a vow to Carrie, I didn't just make a vow to Carrie. I made a vow to God. Now, it doesn't matter what Carrie does to me. I still got a vow to God. If she breaks any vow to me, then I still got to answer to God. Just because if she doesn't have and hold sickness, health, all that, that still doesn't give me a right not to because I have a vow to God. That's what we call the fear of the Lord. Same thing for her. If I break this, she still has a vow to God. And my vow is it doesn't matter compared to her vow to God. That's what we call the fear of God. If you don't have that kind of thing, I'm not going to mistreat people when they mistreat me because of the fear of God. I'm going to do what God says right every single time because of the fear of God, not because somebody's going to catch me. Okay, just going to move on. Okay, verse 16, we didn't buy any land. He could have, but he didn't. Verse 18, I did not demand the governor's provisions because the bondage was heavy on the people. It's this alignment between a person's convictions. His conviction was to build this wall. That's what he was there for. He wasn't there to get rich quick. It was alignment between the person's convictions and his behavior that makes his life persuasive. And this is what we call moral authority. Someone say moral authority. Moral authority is your best friend if you want to do anything for God. Block 14, bold vision requires moral authority. Bold vision requires. Moral authority is the credibility you earn by walking what you talk. It's the relationship others see between what you say and what you do, between what you claim to be and what you actually are. Nothing compensates for lack of moral authority. You want to lead people, but they don't know that you actually care about them. They think you're just trying to build yourself up and look better. They're not going to follow you. You're going to have a lack of credibility and a lack of moral authority. Nothing can compensate for a lack of moral authority. No amount of money or communication skills or accomplishment or education or talent or position can make up for a lack of moral authority. You can't lead people without it. Inconsistency between what is said and what is done inflicts a mortal wound on a leader's moral authority, on his influence. Moral authority is so fragile, it takes a lifetime to earn. It can be lost in a moment and almost impossible to restore. You need to guard this with all costs. Moral authority makes you not just a leader, but as Andy Stanley would call it, a leader worth following. And if you want to be a leader, if you've got a big God-ordained vision that he's placed on your heart, then you've got to be a leader worth following. And the only way to be a leader worth following is to have moral authority, which leads me to block 15. Moral authority requires great sacrifice. You don't get to moral authority without it. It's one of the biggest players in moral authority. Let me tell you a story about a girl named Karen Bennett. Karen Bennett was a single, white, 23-year-old female that lived in Atlanta, Georgia, back in the 90s. Like most Atlanta singles, Karen was saving up for her next Gucci and her Honda Accord that she wanted to drive, but she went down to the inner city once and she saw the emptiness in the eyes of the inner city Atlanta children, and she couldn't ignore it. And she would say there should be. Remember, vision is the tension between what is and what could be or should be. She said that what should be is a safe place for children in the middle of what was a drug-infested war zone. Who was she to do anything about it? She's 23 years old. She doesn't fit the socioeconomical surroundings. What can this girl do? She doesn't understand these people. What can she do about it? Karen and her friends decide to plant a children's church in the inner city. They go down every weekend, and they're barely getting any momentum whatsoever. But they find this old nightclub that sits in the middle of this 25 major inner city projects. And this old nightclub is right in the middle of it. There's drugs and like pretty much drive-by shootings everywhere. And they find this little old nightclub. And it was $2,000 a month. And they said, well, it might as well be $2 million. Most people would have given up on the God-ordained vision at that point. Her heart had broken for the inner city kids. And that was where it started, and that was block 1, if you remember. But now the cost is too high, and I don't know how, God. But remember, God's a God of how. So this God-ordained vision is growing inside of them, and they've realized that they can't have a maybe they could get some help from churches. So they go to churches, but nobody wants to support it because it's not going to work. It's a failed church plant from the get-go. They can't get any help. They're just a bunch of kids, college kids, going out trying to do something. They're not going to get any help. They couldn't afford to have a nice apartment, and a church for these kids, so they broke their leases. And on February 3rd, 1990, Karen Biddett and 5 of her friends left the suburbs and moved into an old abandoned nightclub in one of the most dangerous areas in Atlanta. What they didn't realize at the time, they forgot, as 23-year-olds would, forgot to check if there was heating and air. It's 23 degrees outside and it's 23 degrees inside. Also, they didn't realize that there's no bathroom in there. So to go to the bathroom, they'd have to go down to Hardee's and go to the bathroom and wash up in the sink and then come back to the old nightclub. Also, there were 17-inch rats in there. They called them gophers because they would go for you. And at this moment, in these early moments of Karen Biddett's time of trying to fulfill this God-ordained vision, she starts probably to think that maybe I wasn't hearing God correctly. Surely a vision of God wouldn't be this difficult, wouldn't be this hard. But remember, it requires sacrifice. The kids saw the sacrifice. They would work normal jobs during the week, and on the weekends they would knock on 4,000 doors. How's that for rest? Anyway, now Karen and her 16-member staff now ministered over 3,000 kids in the inner city Atlanta every week. They started up a private school at low cost, but they paid the price for this vision. The sacrifice didn't stop there. It kept going. Metro Assembly has been broken into over 75 times. She was mugged on her way to try to help people. 3 of their staff were beaten up by teenagers who came to their ministry. 10 of the children who attended their first church service had been murdered. And the first funeral that Karen did was on one of her own staff members. Don't you think it's time to quit, Karen? Don't you think it's time to give up? Don't you think it's over? Don't you think God's not really in this? Why would God have you go through all of that? What did she say? She said this: if you decide that what God is asking you to do with your life is just too much on you and just a little too inconvenient, then you will never see the miracles that He has for you. If God has birthed a vision in your heart, the day will come when you are called to make a sacrifice to achieve it. That sacrifice is no guarantee of success. The difference between those with a burden for the inner city kids and those who actually do something is not the money to do it, not the resources. In fact, it's rarely that the resources come before. In fact, it's usually a lot of sacrifice and then that. Some of you are wondering if you're called to go to Peru, and you're wondering, but the money's not there, so I guess I'm not called. Think about Karen Bennett. Those of you guys who are thinking about the Wesley Academy, and you would do it if it was a paid position on staff, but now you have to raise funds like a missionary. Maybe God's not calling me to do it. I want you to think back to Karen Bennett, and I want you to think about the 17-inch rats. And we won't have any of those for you. Block 17. So it will take sacrifice to get moral authority. Block 17 says, abandon all else, but never abandon moral authority. Abandon the vision, but don't abandon moral authority. That is what you've got to have. That is your soul. Don't lose your soul. Don't gain the whole world and lose your soul. Don't become the best person on Wall Street, but make so many shady deals that you'll lose your soul. Don't lose moral authority. It's your most important asset. Abandon everything else. If you got to throw everything else off the ship before it sinks, whatever you do, don't throw out moral authority. Nehemiah probably didn't want to stop building, because to stop and talk to these nobles about something. Think about it. Have you ever had to call somebody out on something? I think it's harder to call somebody out on something than to be called out. How many would agree? It's like step 1, da 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 da. He'll either admit to everything, or he'll just say, we're just not the same. And then you'll begin to wonder why you came. It's about drug addiction and holding somebody accountable. The fray. Anyway. Nehemiah probably didn't want to stop building to call a staff meeting with the nobles And I think it's very interesting that he didn't come down to talk to the enemies. He had no business talking to them. They wanted to ambush him. He's like, I'm doing a great work. I can't come down for that. But he does come down to align the vision. Recently I had to have my car aligned. It was way out, and it was only out by that much, but it was way out, and it's wearing the tires so that the outside was still good and the inside was totally worn bald. A car doesn't put itself in alignment. People don't either. So he comes down, the system is working against itself. He comes down off the wall to have this meeting. It would have been tempting, I think, to just put up with the sin and say, well, think about it. These nobles could have split the vision. Him confronting this at this point, the nobles might have had more influence than he had. And if he calls them out, they could have left and taken 3 rows out with him. Oh, our church might shrink. Oh, they might take the tithers with them. And then how can we keep going? Maybe I'll just let it slide this time and just pretend I don't see that they're using their own people, their own Israelites, and making them slaves. Maybe I can just turn my back on it. Everybody sins, right? So I can't call out one guy's sin. Let's just keep building the wall, guys. But if he would have done that, the people that had been being used would have left the mission. The nobles would have left the mission. Nehemiah would have been standing there holding his hammer. A leader confronts issues. And if you're going to do anything great, you have to confront issues. It's been said that any great organization has had to make hundreds of very difficult decisions. It would have been tempting for him to just be like, you know what, I would like a steak today. But you see all your friends working hard, and they only got like rice and beans, and you're like, man, I would like a steak today. He could have taken it, and it would have been totally within his rights. It would have been easy for him to take a shortcut. For Nehemiah to have done all those things would have been within his rights. But it says in 5:16, but out of reverence of God, I did not act like that. 16, instead, I devoted myself to the work on the wall. That's why I am here. He was there to rebuild the wall and remove the reproach from the city. Worship team, you can come. You will be tempted to take shortcuts on the way to the vision that God's planted in your heart. Someone say shortcuts. They will appear to be a way of speeding up the vision and getting things done. When faced with a moral or ethical crossroads, here's a question to ponder. Would God lead you to embrace a vision that would